Everyone, my good friend Ken Van Liew. Ken and I go back about 15 plus years now. We both done a lot of growth work together, a lot of leadership training, work together. Actually met Ken years ago. I was crewing an event called the Fire Team, part of the Tony Robbins community, where we would actually build these fire lanes for people to walk on, hot coals. And I had a huge amount of respect from him then. Then I've seen him speak on stage, and then over the years, I've had the opportunity to get to know him very intimately as friends and learn about his family, meet his wife, Terry, hear about his three grown up kids now, his twins, right? So when I became a dad myself, Ken gave me some advice on fatherhood. I started late in life, in my almost late 30s, 40s, being a parent. And, I'm reminded of like, we become who we're around, right? We are the average people around ourselves. And I'm grateful because I've gotten to know Ken over these years, and he's taught me so much. Proximity is power. He's a man of great virtue. He stands for integrity. He's done a lot of transformational work over the years. And he just launched his latest book. He's written several books so far. His latest book's called The Modern Wealth Building Formula. And if you're watching this over the course of these 20 minutes, during this 20-minute podcast interview on Facebook, you'll have an opportunity of accessing it. I think it is a free means of accessing it online via a link we'll share throughout this. I'm here to like really serve our audience and really serve Ken as well also, because I'm so inspired by him and his journey, how he lives his life. He's an abundance thinker. And it really makes a difference during these times, during this current COVID climate, to be around people who are abundance thinkers, people who, are real raw in terms of how they operate in the world, how they show up, and like really being in their energy like says a lot. And even myself being around Ken's in his company, it's had me shift my game. It's the whole idea of life as a game, playing a bigger game. It's pushed me to like really be more my edge in terms of business and family and opportunities. And my invitation is for all of you watching that this will inspire you here as well also, because we're going to cover Ken's rules for success. This podcast will be transcribed a bit, and it'll be mind mapped on rulesforsuccess.com. One more thing, Ken's also a member of my community Success Circles. It's a peer coaching community we started in 2005, and he's the ultimate buddy. Everyone I buddy Ken up with in this community, after 2 weeks, they're elevated about 2 or 3 levels up. And I just see this year after year, and it's inspiring, right? So we become who we're around. So it's one of our challenges, our community, is who can we connect Ken with, who is playing as high a game as he is, or even a better game, because we're all about connecting superstars together in success circles. So Ken, great to have you, my friend. Welcome. Yeah.
I can't thank you enough. I don't want to take anything away from the caliber you have, because, the people that you've always, joined hands with me, they become friends, and the beauty of it is it always allows us to go in, and no matter what level we're at, we just come into a game and we get to play together like kids. And it's great to see the growth, because I look and I go, wow. Every time I do one of those 2-week stints with Joseph, it takes me to the next level. Like, so, a lot of your accountability is why I've gravitated to you, because that's one of my traits, and I just want you to know that you've always been an inspiration to me. When we first met, we had some common friends, and, you are a unique engineer, and I love you for that. And to see you grow into the family you have today is just amazing. So
I appreciate that. Ken,
we have the same feeling for each other.
Absolutely, brother. So Ken and I are both engineers, and with engineering school. Ken went to Rutgers years ago as a civil engineer. My dad was a civil engineer. My dad, he built airlines, and what Ken does is extraordinary. He built skyscrapers. So big, tall buildings, 30, 40, 50, 60 stories. Ken's responsible for quite a few of those, Manhattan and elsewhere, I'm sure. And and that's part of his brand too. The man who builds skyscrapers. And I went to your website. I saw all these amazing testimonials from some of the greatest minds out there, from like other Dolph Toulouse. Is that his name?
Dolph was on there. Yeah.
Dolph. And Giuliani, and like other people who all along the years have gotten to witness your accomplishments, your strengths, the structures you've built. And well, tell us about your book. So you're launching the book. The book's already written. It's already out there. I actually have the Kindle version of your book. to tell us about your intentionality with this book and what you're launching.
Yeah. So, the game plan from what I had started many years ago, a company called Global Real Estate Strategies, has morphed into many things. Built our last skyscraper a couple years ago. We now have some, I call them level developments out in Jersey. We have a great land development that includes multi-use restaurants, commercial office buildings, storage, and having a lot of fun on the development side. But I once upon a time I developed a site, $14 million, basically using other people's experience and other people's money. And I always thought you had to kind of be born into the family to be successful, But as I built, skyscrapers for people, I started to see not only a system but a little bit of a formula that started to develop. And so this was the book that we wrote recently. And it's funny because you mentioned us doing a lot of growth work, and I was sitting there one day and I was thinking about letters of the things that we always do when we, go to the Tony Robbins event. One was, massive action, and that was what the M stood for, and I had just taken the wisdom course, for landmark. So the W, stood for wisdom. And how many times have we had leadership conversations? And, I really think that we're a little different than others. We're bold leaders, and that's what the B was for. And the F was really just for forward thinking. And like this puzzle went in my head, and I was like, hey, modern wealth building formula. And not being able to even articulate it, I started to teach it. And I said, I want to show people what I did, which I had then rinsed and repeated over the years. And, we finally had so much stuff stuffed in my head. I figured, let me write it out on paper, So we wrote the book, and, now looking to just kind of continue to do the modern wealth building formula. What we're finding is that it applies to any type of business, right? Because massive action, wisdom, bold leadership, forward thinking applies across the board. And then having the system in real estate, which, is my 3F system, my find, fund, and facilitate system that I created when I developed that $14 million project with, other people's money and other people's experience, that's basically evolved, into this. So that's a little bit about the formula. And I'm really excited to launch it, and people can get the book for free. I understand that it's launching today with some Facebook
Wow, perfect
ads,
timing.
and I think I shared the link with you. So hopefully everybody gets excited. Once upon a time, I found a book on a shelf in a Rutgers library that gave me a thought that changed my life, and I hope that this book does that for others,
Awesome. Well, the link for everyone is it's wealthtour.com forwards to his the book site on Ken Van Liew's website, kenvanliew.com. Wealth Tour, TOUR. That's easy link to remember. And I'll mention it later on as well also. Well, what got you on this path? So I love the references to all the growth work you've done, and then the idea of frameworks, right? It takes a framework to go from point A to point B, right? Or point A to point Z. And especially point Z is like, your destination. You want to arrive in Hawaii, let's say, or be somewhere extraordinary in life, having fulfillment, family, growth, opportunities all around you. What got you into this mindset? What was a catalyst that got you, like, from being a student at Rutgers, getting your master's eventually, maybe your first deal as a builder, down this path? Like, what really propelled you, my friend?
Yeah, and that's always been a hard question for me to articulate, and I'm going to try to tell you how it kind of occurred to me. I came from a lower middle class. My dad climbed telephone poles, and my mom was a bank teller. And I loved them to death because they gave me inspiration. And I always just had this vision of being, successful. I didn't really know what success was. In one of my books, I write about success, but it was just someone who made a difference, whether it was the Mother Teresa type or, someone who was very financially successful. But I always had a vision. My dad told me this story. He said, you'd always run to the ice cream truck outside the house. I don't know where you didn't have any money, but you'd have $1. You'd be buying ice cream for all the kids. He goes, you're always giving stuff away. And I just found that I saw a vision and I wanted to give it to others. And it started, with like with my first hobby, which was magic. I was a magician, and I started hustling to make extra money. I learned the value of money early. My mom and dad didn't have a lot of money. When I went in high school, I was successful in, football. I was an all-state athlete. And between this vision and kind of, taking this coaching mentality on, listening to mentors, it just continued to get brighter, and that led me through a 6-year college plan. I wasn't that smart. I finally graduated in engineering, and I won the award on a site development project, the CE 494 award, all the seniors. And it was a development of a 13-acre site where I engineered it. And when I graduated that year, I was just like, wow, like maybe one day I could develop one of these properties. And this vision and dream just kept growing. And don't get me wrong, it got cross-body blocked a couple of times when, like, I had twins and I couldn't afford things, and my, job wasn't paying enough. But, I just kept seeing the vision. It was one step at a time. I started as a superintendent in the field, directing construction, then an assistant project manager, project executive. And after I learned how to engineer it and then build them, I was like, wow, if I can learn how to finance them, that'd be pretty cool. And then I kind of put it all together, and, it's led me to this point, where, it's just fun, and you try to mix life and work and just enjoy life every day, because it's just one big passion.
What are some lessons you learned along the way? I know being a parent, having twins, your first child or two kids, right? Having twins. And then, there are complexities with all of this too, right? Like having a family and then getting out there and then doing all this growth work, which I know you and your wife both also participate in as well. But what are some key lessons, like, for someone who's watching this, that they can take away?
Yeah, that is an amazing question, because, I'm learning a hard lesson, today, right, with my children, and it's not going to help people if I don't give it live, and you don't realize it, because I have great relationships with my kid. Well, I wasn't always perfect. I had a lot of challenges in life, overcame them, learned about integrity when I became an introduction leader, and, one of the things that I really learned is, how does the world occur to other people, right? So in raising my children, I've now, as they've grown, I've had conversations with them about how I occurred to them at times, and I left them at times with not the right impression, to say the least. As fathers, we're not always perfect. They didn't give us a book, like, chapter 2, like, how do we raise it when the kid's freaking out, and he doesn't want to, so, my son, who had a clearing with me, he's a U.S. Marine intelligence officer at 27, shared some things with me that he's been upset for a long time about, and I feel for him, because I remember when I was 27, when I was upset about a lot of things with my dad, So what I learned is that, as your children grow, you really have to give them their space, really be with them and understand, how it's occurring to them. Like, when my wife and I were struggling to pay for formula and diapers and arguing, maybe they thought the world was coming to an end. Who knows? They're just little kids,
Yeah.
But, you're always learning from your children. And especially in this time, I don't know, I think you may have mentioned or not, my daughter gets married in 2 weeks. I'm giving my daughter away, And I've just learned so much, that she listened to some of the things. I didn't think that she heard a lot of things. And I learned a lesson that when your children are like, Daddy, yeah, like, talk to the hand, they're actually listening to you. They're actually listening to you and hearing you.
Right.
And you see it when they meet their better half and their partner. They'll say something that you said to them as a kid, and they'll say, yeah, we used to do that with the family. And I'm really learning lessons about how important it is, no matter how much we love work, because I've been accused of being a workaholic, to really stay connected and create magic moments with each one of your children, which I've always done,
Wow. It's really, really great. Yeah, I'm learning how to do it myself. Every day we're teaching our son to say, I love you. He's only 15 months old, and this is like his 7th and 8th and 9th word, I love you. And we're capturing it as references as they go up. So he's able to see that. And a part of this, you and I spoke about this before too, part of my why, and I'll ask what your why is shortly too as well. Part of my why is generational wealth, health, and leadership. So it's really on my kids and their kids too as well. And I find that a lot of success is about building references. You built that one property you mentioned when you're doing your master's, when you graduated, and that's stood as a reference for what's next and what's next and what's next. And sometimes life works that way. The idea of the compound effect. As we mature and get older and get wiser, all the things you mentioned in your formula. Over time, that can compound, especially if you're willing to grow and learn and
Yeah.
and get in conversation and learn and and keep course correcting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It just continues to be an amazing journey because I look back just over the last 2 weeks in the apartment hunt in New York City. My daughter's fiance became a new resident at Columbia Presbyterian, and it's just exciting to see the next generation, as you talk about generation, to see my family going out there. And I'm gonna have some tears in my eyes on Sunday when I took my daughter away.
Right.
But
Wow.
I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing. Amazing. Just seeing all of that. And in your next role after that, perhaps your next role after that, there's so many out there, right? Roles in terms of generations and so forth.
Yeah, it really is. And it's funny because you mentioned why before, and you go through your mantras, and it's all about being unlimited energy and health and wealth, and that's my next book. But my why lately is and it started with some of my landmark work, where I was fascinated by how people could get transformed in such a short period of time, and I'm not claiming to be any expert. My goal one day is to share my experiences related to real estate, business, and life, and maybe have a podcast like this one day to help others, but now I forgot my point because I distracted.
But going to your why.
Yeah, but my why really, relative to transformation is, when I was growing up, I always wanted to make a lot of money, and then when you realize that money doesn't make you happy, and my happiest time was when me and Terry would go to the grocery store, buy some white bread and cold cuts and picnic basket, and go have some fun. It's exciting when you have it, but when you lose it, it's really about it just having what you need, and and having some luxuries of life. We've come back so many times. I was always told, you're going to lose it twice and then make all your money between 55 and 60. And that's kind of what happened. But through so many iterations and battle scars, it's I find myself really concerned about helping others. There was a pandemic, but there's a financial epidemic. And a lot of people are struggling,
Yes.
and 42% of people, as I mentioned in my book, retire with less than $10,000,
Right.
and that creates a why that's much bigger than myself. Most of my whys before were a little bit about me. My why is to be about integrity and to take, ownership and, and what I'm about,
Yeah.
to make a difference for others, and to really give people, as you said, proximity is power, more freedom, more self-expression, and to bring love and harmony in the society. I've never been great at that. I've been known as a disruptor. It comes from building skyscrapers with all those tough guys that run the concrete business. But, it works. And, you can't be tough anymore. And that's one of my new trademarks. I need to really be nice to people and not be so tough,
Right. Hmm.
can't be tough.
Especially with family, I'm sure having boundaries, standards as far as buildings go, you've got to meet specifics, right? With buildings, but with family, you've got to be. What I've learned is being adaptable at
Yeah.
times, right? To a degree. One thing I appreciate you saying about integrity, right? So, the idea of integrity, it's defined as honoring your word, right? Like doing what you say, honoring what you say, what you communicate, what comes out of your mouth. That's also true like Landmark. I talk about that. So Ken and I have done a lot of growth work across different organizations. It's one organization we've taken a lot of training with. One thing, and I want to ask you a question, like during these unique times with the pandemic, what's going on, this climate, um, like what are some resources that people can tap into, or standards they can tap into to really like shift, right? Get more resourceful.
Yeah.
But with that, I wanted to add like one of the the definition of integrity, a landmark, which I appreciate that changed my life. It's not just honoring your word, but also they added something to the mix to that, living into an empowering context, right? And how I interpret that. So it's like it's not just the words I say come out of my mouth. It's also every day when I wake up, it's doing what I can to reshift, to be empowered, be resourceful, and that if I don't do that, then I'm out of integrity. Um, that's just something I took out of that environment. And anyone who's watching this, it's a very powerful way of living. When we live that way. How do you define integrity? What is?
It's a great question because I learned a lot about integrity, in my landmark work, and what I surmise is it's like a mountain. You're climbing at all times. You're either in or out of integrity, and it's important that you understand that there's no morality component of it. And I love what you just said about living into an empowering context. And I learned from a recent paper that was actually written with the founder of the whole, Werner Erhard in Harvard. I don't know if you've seen it. It's over 40 pages. There's 5 different levels of honoring the word. And I just found it amazing because it all leads to exactly what you said, keeping the situation empowered, and, and then it leads to several other conversations about the make wrong and stuff. But, the honoring your word is so important because and the way that we define integrity is that at any moment you can clean it up. It's not like defined in the dictionary where if you hurt somebody, you're not cleaning that up.
Hmm.
Like when I realized that my past had made my son upset, my first thing was, let me call and clean that up. Right.
Yeah.
That's a step towards integrity of creating an empowering context. Right. First call may not go good, but it's a step towards empowering context, right?
Yeah.
If I gave my word as a dad to do something, no matter if you haven't talked to a child for a long time, you could still pick up the phone. So, I look at his integrity, on many different aspects. And just to sum it up, not we could, talk about it forever,
Right.
because it's so important, is that without integrity, it's very difficult to have workability in almost anything you're trying to do, whether it's a family relationship. There has to be transparency, and there really can't be withhold. In a work environment, if people aren't honest, which in construction sometimes occurs. If you have one bad apple,
Right.
it just doesn't work as well as you'd like it to, and it creates conflict and disputes, and it's just not necessary. Most of the time, word communication, etc. Communication, I find 85% of the time, people are talking about 2 different things.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, um,
Yep.
the rest is just outlining what the topic is, so you can move through. And the last 5% is just personality. But that's my take on integrity. I try to live myself at the highest level of integrity, and when I'm not in integrity at the standard, I try to clean it up, and that's all you can do.
And what else is foundational? So we talk about building a skyscraper. So you build the foundation. So in terms of character, right? Integrity is, of course, everything. Is there anything else that you live by, you stand by?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I've always standed by is helping others, because I truly believe by, if you give, you're going to receive back. You're not necessarily going to get it back from what you're giving, but I've always at the toughest times, I just get blessed with some great opportunity.
Yeah.
So I live by trying to give as much as possible. I have people around me that I'm constantly giving. Not my children, they're no longer, and they were never spoiled. They've really started to, step out on their own.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's really foundational is that I believe is communication and regular communication, like consistent communication. One thing I've always done with my wife is have a Friday night, like just a quick date night. Saturday is a soulmate night.
Mm.
Sunday morning is, our workout and church day. We have a thing we call Wisdom Wednesdays. So those commitments, I guess they would fall under for the key people in your life, right? Because it's so easy to get really, really busy and lost in the everyday stuff. It happened to me. It happened to me the last few weeks where today's Friday. I'm like, I'm just going to kind of ground myself, enjoy my conversation with my good friend Joseph, and
Awesome.
just kind of step up and take a bird's eye view. So yeah,
Awesome. I always enjoy conversing with you.
yeah,
Being dialogue is a lot of power in that, especially when you're able to
yeah,
really inspire other people, like raise expectations on who each other are, inspire, remind each other how awesome we are, right? That's a big part of it. Last question. So what are some of the rituals you embrace on like a daily basis to kind of get yourself, you mentioned some of the things with your wife, Wisdom Wednesday, for example, the things you do, but for yourself, what are the things you do to kind of get yourself in state to kind of manage your morning, your hour of power, perhaps, or maybe even things you do at the end of your day to wind down your day that, allow you to, maintain that foundation?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like getting up really early today. I was up at like 4 o'clock,
Wow.
and I have a 30-minute, I call it a get ready, where I just take my old sweet time to put on like shorts and whatever I'm going to go to work out. And then today I did a workout. I did 4 loops with a 60-pound vest on, and I try to do that as much as possible. I can't get up that early all the time because sometimes I don't sleep. But right after that, I meditate for 23 minutes. And normally there's so much stuff racing through my head, it just calms me down. And then I fuel my body. And I start my day using a journal where I write down, 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I write down the 3 goals for the day and 3 targets. And then I read a quote of the day. And usually around 9 o'clock, I'll start making my phone calls or be in meetings. But I try to do that morning ritual, and through the day I have a bunch of alarms that go off where I'm reading certain whys and in my phone, alarms for drinking water, to stay healthy and things like that. And very alarm based and very tracking of what I'm doing, almost like in a military style. Sometimes it gets a little relentless, you got to back off when you're dealing with the
Mhm.
girls and stuff. But with everything going on with the developments, and we started a division where we're going to shoot to invest in 10,000 multi-unit apartments. We have ground up developments. We have the new book. I have new programs coming out this year. And a doctor at head of cardiology at St. Peter's Hospital wants to write a book with me on health and wealth. So I need all the systems we can get,
Absolutely.
and the foundational stuff is so important.
Amazing. Yeah, you've got a big game you're playing with all of that. It's really, really, I'm really in awe every time I talk to you
Yeah.
with regard to the and having, your daughter getting married and managing all the other complexities to life, family, um, health, and more. So it's fantastic. Any other words you want to offer people, like given the current climate? Anything else before we close out? And of course, your book is at wealthtour.com. You can access it. You can, it'll be mailed to you, right? It's like a book offer for modern wealth building formula.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else we want to offer?
Yeah, I just want to, you can get the book. It's for free. You have to pay shipping. There's a bunch of other opportunities there, but you'll know how to get in touch with me if you want to try to set up a call. I just want to leave everybody, it's been really tough. I've lost, a superintendent. I had a client sick, project managers. My daughter was quarantined with someone that had it, didn't get it. My mom has been in the hospital with a gallbladder attack. My dad yelping, I'm never going to see her again. Life has not been great, but I have a lot of faith, and everything's going to work out okay. What I'll leave you with is, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. Okay, I've done it. Don't be afraid. We're all here to help you. I'll leave
Awesome.
you with that and make it a great day.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ken. Awesome. Great last words to stay connected, reach out for help. Yeah, get resourceful. This is what this is all about.